Hello. Today I'm going to speak about the Amish culture and more specifically the practice of Rumspringa. That is a German term that means running around. Now I will go into more detail about that here shortly, but first let me kind of set the tone and give you an idea of kind of a little bit about that culture, and that might help you better understand this practice when I start describing it in detail. The Amish culture, they are a Christian group. They believe in God, brotherhood, the importance of family and community, humility, and basically separation from the outside world and what it contains. The basic tenets remain the same, but there is a great deal of variation in some of the exceptions that are made from community to community. Speaking of Amish, as far as what is acceptable when looking at their beliefs in regards to technology. Um, Now, they do isolate themselves as much as possible from technology and mass media, but there are exceptions, and this does vary from community to community. You are prohibited from owning a car, but it's okay to ride in one, which I find very interesting, but it is necessary at times to catch a ride to town or to another farm. Um, Phones are not uh, acceptable inside of an Amish home. Now, there's been an exception made in this case too. If a payphone is placed within the community, then it is okay to use it. Portable batteries and generators are now becoming more of a standard practice because those items are not actually directly connected to the outside world. There's not an electric line going to the home, so that is considered acceptable. And they feel like the technology really erodes face-to-face communication, and I agree with that. And just an example would be one of my daughters texting me from a different room in my house that we're all in. Um, I just don't get that because, just a few steps we could be speaking face to face. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about their worship. They do worship in groups, in their church. Um, and they do this because individual Bible studies are discouraged because it could lead to interpretations that go against the traditional beliefs. And it's kind of interesting. I haven't really considered that perspective, but I think there's more that could be, learned from that idea. But anyway, I thought that was a pretty interesting point. Um, they do pay taxes. They do use banks like you and I, but they do not accept Social Security, retirement, disability, anything like that. They avoid the use of nursing homes or assisted living facilities. They try to, as a community, care and help each other as much as possible. And I think that that's a good thing to a certain degree. Um, and it's not that they're scared of technology or what the outside world has to offer, what the outside world utilizes. It's more of they pride themselves on being self-sufficient. They pride themselves on, being humble and helping each other, and they feel like that these uses of technology will deteriorate and diminish those values and principles. Okay, so German is the primary language of those communities. English is taught in school. Education goes only through the eighth grade, and it is combined with vocational instruction. Basically, in regards to farming, carpentry, the kind of things that you would need to live and sustain yourself in an Amish community. And those are taught at a young age, along with some formal education. I could not find a whole lot of detail in regards to what their specific curriculum was, but I suspect that it's not what you and I probably experienced in school. I know that there's reading and writing, and some math, but as far as maybe the history, literature, some things like that probably are not focused on. Children are not vaccinated in a majority of Amish communities. That's another interesting point. And there are studies being done. I could not find any that have been completed, but there are studies that are being done to study the effects of that, good and bad. And one of the things that they are looking at is the rates of children being diagnosed under the autism spectrum umbrella. So I think that might be some interesting information going forward as far as if there are any effects from vaccinations. I don't know that there are, but I just think this would be an interesting study to use as a comparison. Children, they will live with their parents under the same roof until they are baptized in the church and married. Ordung, Ordung. That is an unwritten set of rules in regards to behaviors and conduct if you live in an Amish community. Failure to follow those will lead to you being shunned by the community and by your own family. Okay, Rumspringa begins at the age of 16. And it is a rite or tradition that allows the teenager, the child, to experience the outside world. The elders in the community turn a blind eye to non-traditional behaviors, anything that they would prohibit, you are allowed to experience and not suffer the consequences for during this time. Some actually leave the community and go in to the outside world. Some do not leave the community, but take part in things that would be considered bad. I mean, such as listening to music, driving a car, staying up late, things that don't sound too terribly bad to us, but to them it's different. So there's a different degree of how one would experience this. And the whole point of this is to give the child the opportunity to make an informed decision about staying with the community or living in the outside world, because you must choose to be Amish. If you choose to stay and live in the outside world, you are disowned. You are disowned by the community, and you are disowned by your family, and there's not to be any contact. You basically no longer exist in their eyes. If you do make the decision to be baptized and accept the Amish life, you are making that commitment for your entire life. You basically shed any aspect of personal identity. If you think about it, even the clothes that they wear are intentionally designed to blend in. Wearing flashy clothes that make you stand out is shunned. It's prohibited. And I can see their point. I mean, you want to be a unique individual, and we do live in a look at me society, and so they are trying to avoid that. And that's why photographs and self-portraits are prohibited, because it takes on a value of self-importance in their minds. Now, in regards to Rumspringa, there are some TV shows, documentaries, and other materials that show this to be a time of drunken, drug-filled orgies and running from the police and things like this. And those cases are the exception. That is not how it was designed to be. And so that is the exception. And the Amish community is disgusted at these portrayals. In my mind, this kind of proves their point on the evils of mass media and how they can be manipulated to show or omit what they would like. So you may be wondering, of these children, that participate in this, how many make the decision to stay? Surprisingly, 80 to 90% of the children that participate in this practice choose to stay and be baptized and live the Amish lifestyle. That is a very high retention rate. But think about it. What are you used to? What's safe? What's comfortable? Those are things that we have to consider. What are we taught to fear? So let's take an opposite scenario. Let's say that part of our passage into adulthood would be to go spend time in an Amish community and decide if we would like to live that lifestyle or return to our own world or culture. Well, there are some aspects of the Amish culture that I can appreciate, but it's also a matter of what you've been exposed to. So, children these days, cell phones and computers and things of that nature, to be offered the opportunity to never have access to those again or use them probably does not seem very appealing. So I would suspect our retention rate would be as high. So, but on the flip side of that, if your home life or your neighborhood or area that you live in, if that situation is bad enough, relocation to anywhere might seem like a good idea. So just something to think about. Now, there are some arguments about this, and one of them is these children have an 8th grade education. Their exposure to the outside world is minimal at best. Is it free choice? Are they really prepared to make that decision? And I can see some validity in that thought process. It's possible maybe they get out there into the world and decide that this is not as satisfying as they had believed it would be. And remember, if you decide to leave, you're done. And I think one of the bad points about this is that you also must take into consideration your family. Because if you decide to go on and do your own thing, you're basically leaving behind your family too. And I don't think that that's a fair thing to have to factor in. But, and the thought is too that, you couldn't live and prosper if you leave the Amish community, but there are documented examples of people that have done that and are very successful. So I don't think that that is really the rule. I don't think that this is a bad practice. I just think it's odd. I do have some concerns that they may not really be prepared to make that decision. And also, too, on a final note, I think we all experience Rumspringa in our lives. You know, that we flirt with the idea of walking out of our house and leaving everything behind to start elsewhere, change careers, move across the country, things like that. So, um, although the practice seems a little odd, it's probably more familiar to us than we realize. So, thank you for listening, and we'll see you at the next assignment.